But now to discuss this changing of the guard, I can bring in Andrew Smith, lecturer in liberal arts at Queen Mary University of London. Good afternoon, Andrew, and thank you for joining us. A changing of the guard today at the Hôtel de Matignon, but is there actually going to be a change?
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? It's one of Emmanuel Macron's most loyal soldiers coming forth, about to emerge in the Matignon. And I think that's really important. This is, in a way, another roll of the dice for Macron. This is surprising in its unsurprisingness. He has reverted to type. This is very much a continuity of the strategy that we've already seen. He's trying to manage the soft right, the centre right. You've got someone tied to the Republicans who's friendly with Bruno Retailleau and others who maybe want to retain his position as Interior Minister. He's not alienated the centre-left because we've got people with whom he can work there in the centre-left. But we also know that he's courted in the past the far right, discussions very publicly with Marine Le Pen. So this is very much an attempt to negotiate consensus. And really what it amounts to is seeing the National Assembly as a sort of, I guess, a broken machine for passing budgets rather than a place to make change. And that, I think, is quite a consistent message that we're seeing from Emmanuel Macron at the moment.
Now, Sebastien Lecornu is seen as close to Emmanuel Macron and has held ministerial or junior portfolios in all of Macron's governments to date. With regard to the personal relationship, is this an attempt by the president to reassert control over the actual government?
I think very much so. This is Emmanuel Macron leaning back into what he knows, the people that he trusts. This is him working with someone who's seen as really an ultra-loyalist. Lecornu is somebody that's kind of shaped in Macron's image, a young figure, seen as a great interpersonal communicator, someone he trusts, the face of France's rearmament, committed to ideas of French
sovereignty.
sovereignty.
Sorry, Andrew, I'll just have to cut you off for a moment as Sebastien Lecornu and François Bayrou are emerging now from the Hôtel de Matignon. We will come back to you. Let's listen in.
J'ai accueilli Sebastien Lecornu.
Today I welcome Sebastien Lecornu
dans ses fonctions de Premier ministre.
In his new job as Prime Minister.
Je lui ai souhaité la bienvenue.
I welcome him to the government.
Il y a trois mots qui me
And
viennent.
at this time, there are three words that come to mind.
Outre les mots de remerciement que
Beyond
j'adresse
the words of thanks,
à
of
l'équipe
course,
formidable que nous avons
that I would
formée
address
ensemble
to
et
the
avec qui
fabulous
nous avons
team
très
that
bien
worked with me.
travaillé.
I think we've worked together
Comme
very
vous savez,
well.
plusieurs projets déterminants
And I
sont
know
prêts.
that there are several
que vous
very
aurez
important
à
projects that are ready to
revoir.
go, and you will be reviewing them.
Le premier mot,
The first word
je vous l'ai dit, c'est
that comes to
aider.
mind is
Le verbe aider.
help, the verb to help.
Je ferai.
I
Je
will,
suis sûr, toute l'équipe qui
and I'm sure
m'entoure
that
fera
all of my team will
avec moi tout ce que nous pouvons
do everything that
pour
we
aider le
can
gouvernement, d'abord parce qu'on a une
to help
petite
the new
expérience de
government,
choses qui sont moins faciles
because
qu'on
we
le croit.
have some experience in the matter. It's not an easy thing to do, and there's a lot at stake. There are many
Mais
challenges,
aussi parce que le moment pour la France est un moment
and it's
très
an
important.
important time for France. There are a lot of demands placed on us,
Et
and
donc,
it's a critical,
mon aide et
even
notre
dangerous
aide
period. And
vous
so
est acquise.
my help and the help of my
À tout
team is something
instant
you can
pendant
count
les
on.
semaines, les mois qui
And
viennent.
this throughout the weeks and months to come.
Deuxième verbe,
The second
rassembler.
verb I would
Je
mention
ne crois
is
pas une seconde que notre pays
unite.
va rester
We must come together.
éternellement dans les divisions,
Our
les
country
injures,
must
la
not
violence,
remain in
tout ce qui s'est
division and
exprimé
insults
ces
and
temps-ci,
violence,
et qui
everything
est
that
en
we've seen
réalité,
recently, which is in
un
fact
handicap profond pour son
a severe
avenir.
handicap for our future.
Le troisième verbe,
And the third
c'est
verb
inventer.
is to invent.
Je disais, je ne crois pas qu'on va rester dans la division.
I
Et je
don't
ne
think
crois
we
pas
will remain
non plus
divided.
que nous allons demeurer un pays
And I do
dans
not
lequel
believe that we will remain a
forces
country
politiques
where
vont
elected officials
continuer
and
à
political parties
prétendre que le réel n'existe pas.
will continue to deny the reality
continuer à
of
prétendre
things,
que non,
continue to
on ne veut
pretend
pas
that
voir, On refuse de voir.
no, we don't want
que
to
c'est à partir
see
de là qu'on
difficult things.
bâtit l'avenir. Je crois exactement le contraire.
I think that, on the
Je
contrary, we
pense
must
que nous
look
devons
these
inventer le monde
things in
nouveau
the face and we must
qui va
invent
s'imposer,
the new
mais le faire
world
à partir
that
de
we
la
must
réalité.
bring
Et
about.
je suis
And we must
persuadé qu'il y
invent
a
this world based
des
on
millions de Français qui
the
ont
reality of
envie
our
de
situation.
participer
And
à
I think
cette
many French people
reconstruction
want to participate in
réaliste.
rebuilding a
Je crois
realistic nation.
profondément à l'idéal
I
politique.
believe
Je ne pense
deeply
pas qu'on
in
puisse
political
vivre
idealism.
un engagement politique
I don't think
sans
you
idéal.
can have a political
Mais
commitment
Jaurès a dit
without
ça beaucoup mieux que moi
ideals.
autrefois.
Jaurès said it better than I did.
Aller vers l'idéal,
We must move
faut partir du
towards
réel.
the ideal, and we
Et
must
c'est
begin
ce réel-là
with the
qui a
real.
été, je crois, pendant longtemps
And I think for a long time,
dissimulé et que les Français
this idea has been somewhat shadowed.
prendre en main. Et je suis
And it's
persuadé
time now for the French
fond,
to
c'est ça
take up this idea again.
le moment qui s'ouvre.
This is a time
Donc,
of possibility for us. Things are opening up.
rassembler,
So we must help one another, we must unite, and we must invent. And we will be happy to do that, Mr. Prime Minister,
Merci
with you
beaucoup,
and
Monsieur
your
le Premier
team.
ministre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, Mesdames, Messieurs
Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, ministers,
je ne vais pas faire de grands discours.
I will not make a
L'instabilité
big speech because we can see that the current instability and crisis that we are going through calls for humility
Je remercie évidemment le
and
Président de la République
solemnity.
pour sa confiance.
I would like to thank the President of the Republic for his confidence in me, and I would like to thank you as well for the help that you are offering me, which of course I will gladly accept. I would like to pay homage to your great courage as an activist and a citizen as you continue to defend your ideals right up until the last minute. And I think that if there is justice, one day you will be recognized for all that you have done for France. And then I would like to say to the French people that we will succeed. Nothing is impossible as we move forward. We're faced with a gap between the political situation and what citizens legitimately expect for their social and economic situation, what they expect from us. And there is a gap between real life and political life. It is quite a concern, not only for those of us who are sitting in governing positions, but for all of those interested in politics. And of course, as I am leaving the position as Minister of the Army, I have seen that there are also gaps that exist between the reality of things and how things are perceived. And we can't allow that to persist. We perhaps need to be more creative, but also more technical in the way that we work. We've just spoken about this at length. But I think there will also be some disruption, and not only in terms of form and method, but there will be deep disruptions. So I will not make a long speech, but I will be meeting with political leaders in the coming days, with trade union leaders, and I will soon be making a longer speech to the French people. Mr. Prime Minister, once again, dear François, thank you.
And we can go back to the Hôtel de Matignon there, where France 24's Clovis Cavalli has just been watching that handover of power between François Bayrou and Sebastien Lecornu. Clovis, two short speeches, but and quite a contrast between the two men there.
Indeed, and the two men, and now François Bayrou and his team leaving the Hôtel de Matignon. François Bayrou, the former now Prime Minister of France, saying to Sebastien Lecornu, who's taking over, "You can count on me." And also saying that he doesn't believe that divisions, instability, and so on, and chaos will continue here in France. There is a path to fix that. And François Bayrou also saying we need to invent a new world to fix the problems here in France, and millions of people want to take part in that. I am convinced in that. Those were the words of François Bayrou. And then interesting to hear Sebastien Lecornu, who's now the new Prime Minister of France, saying we will succeed. There is no impossible way. And at the same time, there is a very big gap between the political situation, by that he meant all the divisions, the chaos, the failure to negotiate between parties, and what the French people expect. And that gap he needs to fill, he needs to fix it.
Thank you very much for that, Clovis. We'll go back to Andrew Smith, lecturer in liberal arts at Queen Mary University of London. Thank you once again, Andrew. We have just heard there from the new Prime Minister, Sebastien Lecornu. He mentioned a need to be more creative and more technical. There was a little bit of the air of a middle manager about that.
Was his political narrative so far? He's one of the guys that that helped find that solution, if it were, that attempt to address the frustrations of the Yellow Vest movement through that local implantation, that idea of engaging on a very local level. He's also the face of France's rearmament, finding answers to technical problems around rearmament. And already there today, we've seen him signal a willingness to meet with social partners in the unions, and we've seen a willingness to kind of, exercise that interpersonal skills of working across party lines. And I think more than anything, this doesn't represent a change in ideas or ideology or anything like that. This is, a change in strategy, looking at ideas of how to work with this difficult reality. Anything is possible, he says. If politics is the art of the possible, then this is really someone who's coming in to kind of work between those gaps, to find the idea of how to make this happen.
Now, of course, we're seeing quite large protests across France today, and there are a number of grievances the protesters have, but one of them is the Emmanuel Macron's budget, which is still hanging in the balance. The opposition and unions are firmly against that, and the protests have started. They don't look like they're going to finish right away. Will the new Prime Minister be able to do anything different to what François Bayrou has done?
I think it's going to be very difficult to find a huge amount of difference, but clearly there needs to be some change in approach. François Bayrou was unwilling to engage with some of the kind of, I guess you'd start to say, kind of intermediaries perhaps in the Socialist Party with whom he'd engaged. He said he couldn't move on certain things, he wouldn't move on other things. We saw him give ground famously to, to thinking about what the far right might want to look at, but then pulled right back again. François Bayrou had seemed to disappoint many people with whom he set up potential partnerships. And I think what will need to happen is there will need to be some movement around some of the big stalking horses. It might be public holidays. It might be looking again at kind of, more progressive taxation measures. These are the kind of things that might speak to some of these citizen demands. Of course, there's been big movements across France, perhaps not huge movements in the scale of the Yellow Vests. Perhaps we tie that to the greater control of the far left over some of these movements as they've developed. But clearly there is, a lot of the same slogans, a lot of the same personnel that were involved in the Yellow Vest. The chant is, on est là, we are here. And that's what people want to be heard. That's got to be the message for what Lecornu has to do. It's what he's got to bring into that from the first moment. Recognise there's a difference to where they are, the protesters, and where government is in this current impasse. At the moment, For me, I see greater blockages in the National Assembly than on the streets of Paris today. And I think actually Lecornu in the past has found solutions to difficult issues. And we can only hope for France's sake that he's able to find more solutions in this current term.
Now, more than 12 months have elapsed since Emmanuel Macron last dissolved the National Assembly, meaning he can theoretically do it again if he so chooses. And former President Nicolas Sarkozy has urged him to do that. But is there any chance of this happening, even if Sebastien Lecornu fails in his new job?
It's really challenging to see. I mean, of course, we saw Sarkozy talk about a dissolution. We saw Edouard Philippe say that, people might be betting on it. And as soon last night as this announcement broke that it was another Macron loyalist coming in as Prime Minister, I saw people saying online, other commentators saying, let's bet on dissolution, surely. It looks difficult. This is a really challenging situation. Nothing fundamentally has changed. If anything, I think some of those potential partners are more entrenched in their viewpoints. It is a really challenging situation for Lecornu to address. So there is this potential solution coming from above, but we know that looking at the national rally and the polls, etc., all this will do is give more of an impetus to that popular anger, to an emotional kind of expression of social pessimism, effectively coming from the people. And that is, not a positive sign if you want to create a constructive France that can move forwards. I think again and again, Emmanuel Macron said this is a parliamentary crisis, not a political crisis. And again, it relies on Parliament to solve the problems of the French people and not the people to solve the problems of the French Parliament. And so I think this appointment is very much something which recognises that. But that's not going to be something that people are pleased to hear, because for many, it looks like continuity Macronism.
Now, Emmanuel Macron has faced deadlocked parliaments for much of his second term, particularly since he called those snap parliamentary elections last year. Does this make him a lame duck president?
I think it represents a real change of priorities. For Emmanuel Macron, of course, in his second term, he has been that much more active, I would say, on the international stage. He's, been working on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He's been, engaging with international partners around the war in Gaza, the Israeli actions in Gaza. He's been looking at, trying to mitigate Europe's reaction with engagement with the US. This has been, I think, the kind of priority of his second term. He's left much of that domestic governance to prime ministers who, as we've seen, have repeatedly failed to do much with that brief. So whether this represents Macron putting a loyalist back in charge so he can take a more hands-on role in domestic affairs, I guess we'll see. At the moment, he has been unable to influence and impose his will on Parliament. He's been unable to drive much change forward. Why? Because other parties, the opposition, are unwilling to work with him. So in that sense, he has been unable to exercise his authority as president on a domestic stage. Whether this changes with the appointment of the new Prime Minister, it remains to be seen. Perhaps this will be the electroshock that François Bayrou spoke about as a way to revive Emmanuel Macron's second term. As you say, mired in crisis up to this stage.
Thank you very much for that. Andrew Smith, lecturer in liberal arts at Queen Mary University